Just as the morning sun rose, Trieu Duong noticed something worrying. Truc Lam's tiny clothes were still damp, and even touched by dust and insects. These weren't just clothes. They were what kept his little girl safe. So he quietly made a decision to build a better, safer place to dry them. But with sudden rain and simple tools, can he really protect everything she needs? If you enjoy warm, heartfelt stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. The morning light slowly spills across the yard, soft and golden, wrapping everything in a quiet warmth. The air still carries a hint of coolness from the night, but the day is already beginning to breathe. Dad Trieu Duong steps out barefoot onto the packed earth, stretching his back slightly after a long night of waking up to check on little Truc Lam. Inside the small house, Truc Lam is just beginning to stir. A gentle sound, soft, innocent, full of life. He pauses for a second, listening, and then, without hesitation, he turns back inside. There she is, wrapped in a light blanket, her tiny hands moving slowly as she wakes. Her eyes are still half closed, but when she senses him near, she lets out a small sound, almost like she knows she's safe. Trieu Duong smiles immediately. Not a big smile, just a quiet one, the kind only a father makes when his whole world is right in front of him. "Good morning, my little girl," he whispers softly. He gently lifts her into his arms, supporting her head with practiced care. Every movement is slow, intentional, like he's holding something more precious than anything else in the world. Because he is. After feeding her and patting her gently until she lets out a tiny burp, he carries her outside. The sunlight touches her face, and she squints slightly, then relaxes against his chest. But as he looks around the yard, his expression slowly changes. There, hanging on a simple rope line stretched between two wooden posts, are Truc Lam's tiny clothes. Some are still slightly damp. A few have small dark spots, dust maybe, or worse, signs of insects that passed by during the night. He steps closer, gently touching one of the shirts. Still not completely dry, his brows tighten. That's when a quiet worry begins to settle in his chest. These are not just clothes. They're what keep his daughter warm, clean, safe. And right now, they're not good enough. He looks up at the rope line. It's too low, too exposed, too close to the ground. Bugs can easily reach it. Moisture lingers too long. And when the weather shifts, everything takes longer to dry. Trieu Duong exhales slowly. "No, this won't do," he murmurs. He glances back at Truc Lam, who is now calmly resting in his arms, completely unaware of the problem, but fully trusting him. That trust, it means everything. And in that moment, he makes a quiet decision. He's going to build something better. Not just a clothesline, but a proper drying space, wide, elevated, clean, and safe. A place where every piece of clothing his daughter wears will be protected from dampness, from insects, from anything that could harm her delicate skin. He gently places Truc Lam in her small cushioned area under the shade, making sure she's surrounded by soft blankets so she can move safely. Before stepping away, he pauses. He reaches down and lightly adjusts the edge of her blanket, a small gesture, but full of care. "Stay here, okay? Papa will make something for you," he says softly. Her tiny fingers move slightly as if responding, and that's enough. Trieu Duong turns and walks toward the corner of the yard where his tools are kept. A few pieces of wood lean against the wall, leftovers from previous projects. Some are straight, some slightly warped, but all usable. He begins sorting through them, carefully selecting the strongest pieces. His movements are calm but focused. This isn't just another build. This is for Truc Lam. He measures the space with his eyes first, looking at the distance between two open areas where sunlight hits the longest during the day. That's where it should go. More sunlight means faster drying. Faster drying means less moisture. Less moisture means no mold, no bacteria, and no risk. To his daughter, he nods slightly, confirming his plan. Then he begins. The sound of wood being cut breaks the quiet of the morning. Each strike is steady, controlled. He works methodically, shaping the wooden posts that will become the main support. From time to time, he glances back, always checking, always making sure she's okay. And every time he sees her lying there peacefully, his movements become even more determined. He digs two deep holes in the ground, placing the wooden posts firmly inside. He packs the soil tightly around them, pressing down with his feet to ensure they won't shift. Strong foundation. It has to be, because this structure needs to hold not just clothes, but his responsibility as a father. Sweat begins to form on his forehead as the sun climbs higher, but he doesn't stop. Piece by piece, the structure begins to take shape. A higher frame, wider spacing, enough room to hang many clothes without them touching each other. Air needs to flow. That's important. He ties a stronger rope across the top, pulling it tight until it no longer sags. Then he adds a second line, and a third, each one carefully spaced. He steps back for a moment, observing. It's better, much better than before, but still, not enough. His eyes narrow slightly as he looks at the open sky above. Rain, sudden, unpredictable. If it rains, everything will be soaked again. And all this effort, wasted. He looks around again. Then his gaze lands on a few large leaves and some leftover bamboo pieces nearby. An idea begins to form. He nods once. Quickly, he gathers the materials and starts building a simple overhead cover, not fully enclosed but enough to shield the clothes from direct rain while still allowing sunlight and airflow. It's not perfect, but it's smart, functional, thoughtful, just like everything he does for her. As he works, the sound of Truc Lam softly fussing reaches him. He immediately stops. Without hesitation, he walks back, wipes his hands quickly on his pants, and kneels beside her. "It's okay. Papa's here," he whispers. He gently picks her up again, rocking her lightly. The world can wait. This moment cannot. She settles down almost instantly, her small body relaxing against him. And for a brief moment, everything is still again. No tools, no building, just a father and his daughter, held together by something deeper than words. After a few minutes, when she's calm again, he carefully places her back down and returns to his work. But now there's something different in his eyes. Not just determination, but quiet pride. Because he knows every nail he drives, every rope he ties, every decision he makes, it's all building something bigger than just a clothes drying rack. He's building safety. He's building care. He's building a life where Truc Lam grows up surrounded by warmth, protection, and the kind of love that never needs to be spoken out loud. And as the structure nears completion, standing taller and stronger under the midday sun, one question quietly lingers in the air. Will this be enough to truly protect everything she needs? The sun slowly climbs higher, pouring stronger light across the yard, turning the ground warm beneath Trieu Duong's feet. The wooden structure now stands firmly in place, taller, wider, stronger than anything he had built before for such a simple purpose. But to him, this is no small thing. He steps back, breathing a little heavier now, his chest rising and falling as sweat runs down his temples. His eyes scan every detail, each knot, each rope, each joint of wood. It looks complete, but something inside him still isn't fully at ease. He turns his head slightly, glancing toward Truc Lam. She's awake now. Her eyes are open, quietly observing the world around her. Her tiny legs move gently under the blanket, and when she sees him, she lets out a soft sound, almost like a small call. Trieu Duong's expression softens immediately. He walks over, slower this time, as if the world naturally slows down whenever he's near her. He crouches beside her and gently places a finger in her tiny hand. She wraps her fingers around him without hesitation. That small grip, it says everything. "You're waiting for Papa, huh?" he whispers, a faint smile forming. For a moment he forgets about the structure behind him. Nothing feels more important than this connection, this silent bond between father and daughter. But then his eyes shift again, back to the clothes, back to the reason he started. He carefully lifts Truc Lam into his arms and walks toward the new drying frame, step by step, steady and protective, keeping her close to his chest as if shielding her from everything around. With one hand, he reaches for the small pieces of clothing still hanging on the old rope line. He removes them one by one, each tiny shirt, each soft cloth, each little piece that carries the scent of his daughter. He inspects them again, still slightly damp, still not safe enough. His jaw tightens slightly, not out of frustration, but out of determination. "Not anymore," he murmurs quietly. He walks to the new structure and begins hanging the clothes onto the higher lines. This time, everything is different. The clothes no longer touch each other. They are spaced apart, open to the air, lifted far from the ground. The sunlight reaches them more directly now. The breeze moves more freely between them. And most importantly, they are no longer within easy reach of insects crawling below. He adjusts each piece carefully, making sure nothing overlaps. His movements are slow, almost gentle, like he's arranging something fragile. Because to him, these are not just clothes. They are part of how he protects her. After hanging everything, he steps back again, holding Truc Lam securely in one arm. They both look at it. Father and daughter, one building, one trusting. The wind passes through the frame, causing the clothes to sway lightly. For the first time that day, Trieu Duong allows himself a small breath of relief. But just as that feeling begins to settle, the sky shifts. A faint shadow moves across the ground. He looks up. Clouds, dark ones, slowly gathering. His eyes sharpen instantly. Rain. It's coming, and not later. Soon, the air changes. The breeze grows heavier. The sunlight weakens behind the forming clouds. Trieu Duong's grip around Truc Lam tightens slightly, not out of fear, but instinct. He turns quickly toward the structure. The overhead cover he made. Will it be enough? There's no time to wonder. He gently places Truc Lam back in her safe spot under the shaded area, tucking the blanket around her once more. This time his movements are quicker, but still careful. "Stay here. Papa will protect everything," he says softly, his voice calm but firm. Then he turns and moves fast. The first drops begin to fall. Light at first, then heavier. The sound of rain hitting the ground grows louder with each second. Trieu Duong rushes to the drying frame, checking the cover. Some drops slip through the edges. The wind pushes the rain sideways, threatening to reach the clothes. His eyes scan the structure rapidly. Think, adapt, act. Without hesitation, he grabs additional pieces of bamboo and large leaves nearby. His hands move faster now, driven by urgency. He reinforces the sides, angling the cover slightly to guide the rain away. The rain intensifies. Water begins dripping along the edges, but the center remains mostly dry. Not perfect, but working. He adjusts one side again, tightening the rope, pulling it lower so the cover sits more securely. The leaves overlap better now, creating a stronger barrier. His clothes are soaked. His shoulders glisten with rain. But he doesn't stop, because in his mind, there's only one thing that matters. Truc Lam's clothes must stay clean, must stay dry, must stay safe. After a few intense minutes, the structure stabilizes. The rain continues to fall, but the clothes underneath remain protected, swaying gently in the filtered wind. Trieu Duong steps back, breathing heavily now. He looks up once more. The sky is still dark, but the worst of it seems to be passing. Slowly, the rain begins to ease. The sound softens. The drops become lighter, until finally, it stops. Silence returns, broken only by the faint dripping of water from the edges of the structure. Trieu Duong stands there for a moment, completely still. Then he turns and walks back to Truc Lam. She's awake, watching, quiet, as if she had been waiting the entire time. He kneels beside her, his wet clothes clinging to his body, his hands still slightly trembling from effort. But his eye soft again. He gently picks her up. "It's okay. Everything's okay now," he whispers. He carries her back to the drying frame. And together, they look. The clothes are still dry, clean, lightly moving in the air, safe. Trieu Duong lets out a slow breath. A real one this time. The kind that comes after you've done everything you possibly could. He lowers his head slightly, resting his cheek gently against Truc Lam's head. No words, just presence, just warmth. The sun begins to return, breaking softly through the clouds. Light touches the wooden frame again, illuminating the clothes as they continue to dry in the fresh air after the rain. It's not just a structure anymore. It's proof. Proof that even with limited tools, even with sudden challenges, a father will always find a way. Not because it's easy, but because love makes it necessary. Trieu Duong looks at the frame one last time, then down at Truc Lam, and a quiet smile appears again. Not proud, not loud, just certain, because now he knows. No matter what comes next, he will always build what she needs. He will always protect what matters most. And in this simple yard, under the open sky, with nothing but his hands and his heart, he has created something strong enough to hold more than clothes. He has created a space filled with care, safety, and a love so steady that Truc Lam will feel it, long before she ever understands it. One quiet morning, Trieu Duong realizes that Truc Lam's clothes are still damp and exposed to dust and insects, making him worry about her safety. Knowing these small things matter for his daughter's health, he decides to build a stronger, higher clothes drying rack that allows better sunlight and airflow while keeping insects away. With limited materials, he carefully constructs the frame, always checking on Truc Lam with gentle care. Just as everything seems ready, unexpected rain arrives, testing his effort. Acting quickly, he reinforces the structure to protect the clothes. In the end, his determination pays off. The clothes remain clean and dry. Through this simple act, Trieu Duong shows a father's quiet love, proving that no matter the challenge, he will always find a way to protect and care for his daughter.